Hello everyone, I'm Buddy here at Haas of Props, and today I'm going to show you how to make a Mandalorian Season 2 inspired Pram for this little guy. To get started, you will need the free PDF template, the link to which I have provided in the description below.
Unless you have a large format printer, make sure to select Poster in your printer settings. Tile scale should be set at 100%. Tape the template together, cut out the patterns, and trace onto specified foam sizes with a ballpoint pen. Scissors can be used to cut out the 2mm foam pieces. A small table saw or bandsaw can be used to cut the 6mm and 10mm pieces. If you do not have a saw, a utility knife will work just as nicely. Use a rotary tool to remove imperfections from all cut edges. Find parts A, apply contact cement to the darts on both pieces, and allow to almost dry. A heat gun can be used to speed up the drying process. Press and squeeze the darts together. This will start to create the curved shape we need. After the darts are attached, curve these pieces slightly by hand. Repeat this same process with parts B. Apply contact cement to the edges of parts A without a dart. Allow to dry and attach these two edges together. The same can be done to parts B. These will make up the bottom of the pram. Apply contact cement to the edges of A section and B section, let them dry, and then attach. If there are gaps or uneven edges, don't worry, these will be dealt with later in the process. Next, apply contact cement to the outer curve of part C and 1/4 inch below the brim of parts A. After the cement has dried, begin by attaching the center point of part C into the seam of parts A and work out to the edges. Find part D and apply a bead of superglue about 1/4 inch from one of the short ends. Center part D on the seam between parts A and parts B, leaving the 1/4 inch slightly above the edge of the pram. Apply contact cement to part D and the bottom of the pram. Work out from the superglued edge and make sure to press firmly. There will be excess foam. This can be trimmed off with scissors. Next, apply contact cement to part E and around the front part of the pram. When dry, attach so part E is 1/4 inch above the edge of the pram. Apply contact cement to part F and the rear half of the pram. Let dry and attach to the rear half with 1/4 inch of part F sticking above the edge of the pram. Find parts G and apply contact cement to the darts. Let dry and then press the darts together. Place a mark on one side of each of part G. This will become the inside of the curve. Using contact cement, attach the short ends of part G to each other and curve slightly by hand. With contact cement, attach the darts on parts H. Attach the two larger sides without darts together. With the darts pointed up, using superglue, attach part G to the pram on the rear inside lower edge, making sure to align the two vertical seams. Next, we will attach part H. At this point, you may want to bring Grogu into the build and make sure that he fits. Use superglue to attach part G to part H, but just at the seam. Attach H so the sides are at 90 degrees with the edge of the pram. Part I can be applied to the top seam of part H in the same manner as we attached part D. Part J is then applied the same way to the seam of part G. Excess foam can then be trimmed with scissors. Parts K and L need to be aligned before attaching. Slightly tuck the edge of K and mark its edge with a pencil. Next, align part L so it follows this pencil line. Attach parts K and L using superglue and contact cement. Use this technique on both sides and remove excess with scissors. Next, attach part G to part H at the 3 points where the 2mm foam is by using superglue. Apply contact cement to half of each part M and the underside of the hood between the 2mm pieces, and then attach. In order to cut the 21 pieces for parts N, I set up a jig to the specific width and using a push bar cut without needing to worry about consistency. These were attached using superglue. The first can be glued in the center of part C, then using the spacer piece, I then attach the remaining pieces. Make sure not to glue down the spacer. Next, part O can be attached to the inside of these pieces using super glue. The reason I am using 2 pieces in this video is because I didn't have any piece of 6mm foam that was long enough. Trim off excess with scissors. Parts P are attached to the center of parts Q using contact cement. These are then attached to the outer brim of the pram. Parts R are attached to the backside of parts Q with contact cement. These will stick slightly above parts Q. Parts S are attached to the rear of parts R and the pram lid with contact cement. Parts T are attached to the center of parts U with super glue. These are then attached to the inside of the pram lid. Parts V are then glued into the remaining gap. Parts W are glued with contact cement onto the outer brim behind parts Q. If there is a gap, don't worry, this will be filled in later with caulk. Using a rotary tool, sand down any rough edges on these outer hinge pieces before continuing. Part X is attached with super glue on the inside curve of part C. Trim any excess with scissors. Parts Y need to have their edges rounded with a rotary tool before installing. In order to make the top sit flat against the inside of the lid, cut off one of the top corners on parts Y and super glue into place. The bottom of parts Y sit on the top of parts U. Center part Z on the middle of the front brim and attach with contact cement. Part AA can be centered onto part Z and glued down. Part BB can then be attached to part AA, still using contact cement. Parts CC can be centered on the top of parts S and secured with super glue. Super glue part DD on the inside of the lid covering the center seam. Trim the excess. One part EE is superglued on top of the lid in the center about a 1/4 inch back from the front edge. The other 2 EE pieces are centered on the edge of parts L. Part FF is superglued on the inside back of the pram. Parts GG are superglued onto parts W. Parts HH are then glued onto parts GG with the cutout pointing up. Take a rotary tool and smooth all edges and seams. HD foam comes with little air bubbles. We will fill these in by hand with caulk. Once caulk is placed in the hole, seam, or gap, smooth with a rag. Once the caulk has dried, take a heat gun and slowly go over the entire surface to seal the foam. Use Plasti-Dip to coat the entire build. Spray an even coat, but avoid overspraying because this will cause runs. Instead, build up with multiple coats and allow to dry. To match the gray of the pram, I use Rust-Oleum's Parisian Grey Satin Enamel. Apply this in a similar manner as the Plasti-Dip. Next, I use the Sideshow pram photo as a guide to pencil in where the orange stripes would be placed. Use the pencil lines as a guide for the painter's tape. To achieve the correct orange color, I used a mixture of Apple Barrel's Outrageous Orange and Nutmeg Brown acrylics with Folk Art's Calico Red acrylic. When the right color is achieved, paint the designated areas. By adding some Calico Red to the previous mixture, I was able to achieve the interior color. This is applied to the base of the pram, but not the lid. Using the same paint, I then painted the grill-looking part of the pram. Remove the painter's tape. Using a mixture of black and white acrylic and a flat brush, I proceeded to add the aging. This process can be used to hide any spots where the paint may have bled under the tape. I then brushed black acrylic onto various spots of the pram and then wiped the majority off. This adds another level of aging. Finally, use the nutmeg brown to dry brush some of the pram's edges. This adds some dirt and grime.
And there you have it. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Hit the like and subscribe buttons if you haven't done so yet to see more awesome things coming your way.
And follow me on Instagram and Twitter.